Warner Brothers and DC Films have announced officially that they will be doing a sequel to The Batman. The enormous success from Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson, Colin Farrell, Zoe Kravitz, and others. This is not a surprise. It made a ton of money, and it was pretty well received critically. I think a lot of Batman fans, DC Comics fans, were actually quite impressed with the film, and I think they were happy with the movie that ended up coming out from Matt Reeves. Me personally, I have finally seen the movie. I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on what worked, what didn't work, some of the things I hope Matt Reeves and company maybe reconfigure when they come out with the sequel. But I do have the details, the limited information that we do have. Let's have a little conversation here. And I also have information about a spin-off series. We knew we were getting one set in Gotham City. Apparently, we're getting a second series. So here's the information that we do have. Warner Brothers and DC announced Tuesday night at CinemaCon that The Batman is officially getting a sequel, as Warner Brothers delivered the studio's highly anticipated presentation. The Batman, released in early March of this year, went on to be a huge critical and box office success. Thus far, it is the highest grossing film of 2022, with a total worldwide take of $759 million. That is a lot of cheddar, and I do not blame them for signing up for more Matt Reeves' The Batman. There are several things about this film that I think probably deliver better than any other Batman movie that's ever been made. We've had a ton of Batman movies. I think the detective aspects regarding Batman and his mission in Gotham City are better portrayed in this Batman film than they ever have been on screen. For the most part, when you've had any detective aspects really in the Batman movies, just technology. Technology solves it all for Batman, and then he moves on his merry way. Here we did see Robert Pattinson and Gordon kind of going through and solving the puzzle pieces left by Riddler along the way to kind of figure out the mystery. I thought that was really well done. It felt really like an homage to The Long Halloween, which is one of my favorite Batman comic stories of all time. So I thought that was done phenomenally well. I must say the casting was also really great. There was only a couple miscasts in there, but for the most part, the entire ensemble cast absolutely brought it. We got good performances across the board and really interesting portrayals of the characters. And I definitely agree at this point that a sequel is warranted. Even though I do have a few discrepancies in the film that I think could be done a little bit better when they do the sequel. Obviously, there's going to be a progression of the story. I believe it's probably going to be a trilogy. They always do a Batman trilogy, right? Robert Pattinson donned the cape and cowl for the first time as the iconic DC superhero. His initial foes included Riddler, played by Paul Dano, and Oswald Cobblepot, a.k.a. Penguin, played by Colin Farrell. Zoe Kravitz played Selena Kyle, a.k.a. Catwoman, and Andy Serkis played Alfred Pennyworth, Bruce Wayne's butler and mentor. Now, talking about some of the performances, I think the one thing that really stood out that was glaring, that was a negative, besides the fact that it was almost 3 hours. Superhero movies don't need to be as long as Braveheart. We can keep these movies down to the 2-hour mark. There's no reason to have a 3-hour Batman movie. Besides that, I do think the interpretation and the portrayal of Bruce Wayne and Batman by Robert Pattinson was a little bit off. There was almost no distinction from when he was Bruce Wayne and when he was Batman. I've always felt that when Bruce Wayne puts on the cowl, he's more himself and he's more confident. And I think whispering throughout the film while he was in the cowl wasn't a choice that I personally liked all that much. I think he should have been much more assertive and much more confident in his speech patterns when he was in the cowl. I kind of thought it was interesting that you got this weird emo, Bruce Wayne, and he is conflicted about whether or not he's doing the right thing or even if he's being successful. So I think they should have made a distinction between the personalities and the way that Robert Pattinson played them. They need to be different. It's the same person, but they're different parts of his persona. Like, he's not crazy. He doesn't have multiple personalities, but you get what I'm saying? I think he should have been much more confident when he was in the cowl. He was Batman. I also really didn't like the portrayal of Alfred, not specifically Alfred himself, but the relationship between Alfred and Bruce. I thought that was really strange. Normally, Alfred's much more of a caring, like nurturing type mentor, a father figure. It almost felt like there was some animosity between the two, which is an interesting take, I guess, but certainly not the normal relationship that we've seen through 80 years of comic books and Batman. Otherwise, I thought most of the portrayals were really solid. I thought Riddler was really interesting. He didn't feel like Riddler. He felt like something more out of a Zodiac movie or something. But I thought it was an interesting choice to make the character a little bit more dangerous. I thought the portrayal of Gordon was really good. I actually liked Selena Kyle. I thought she brought some interesting things to the table. There were a couple of lines of dialogue I didn't like. And actually, I thought the best performance in the entire film really was Colin Farrell as Penguin. I thought that was the best interpretation we've ever seen of Penguin on film. Like, it was really good. I understand a lot of people, when they hear the Penguin, like, oh, he must have flippers and eat raw fish, kind of like what we got with Danny DeVito back in the day. But no, he's Penguin because he wears a tuxedo. He's just a crime boss. And I thought it was a really good portrayal. It really brought me in there. We do have one quote from the Warner Brothers movie chief, Tony Emmerich. He said, Matt took one of the most iconic and beloved superheroes and delivered a fresh vision. Matt Reeves, Rob Pattinson, and the entire team will be taking audiences back to Gotham with The Batman 2. I think Matt Reeves really hit it out of the park. I think he nailed pretty much everything that he wanted to in this film. And the other thing done in this Batman film that's better than we've ever seen in another Batman film, just besides the interpretation of Penguin, which I thought was fantastic, and incorporating the detective aspects of Bruce Wayne Batman into it, was the portrayal of Gotham, which I personally think is one of the greatest supporting characters in the history of comic books. We've had weird versions of Gotham in movies before, but we've never had this real city of crime type atmosphere that really draws you into Gotham. And it almost feels like the city itself is a diabolical villain. And really overcoming Gotham is one of the things that Bruce Wayne and Batman have to do. So I think that was a really great interpretation, kind of definitely borrowing from Seven, which is one of my favorite movies. I really like David Fincher. He's one of my favorite directors. Not only do you have Seven, you got Fight Club, even The Social Network. I think he knocked all those out of the park. The only bad movie I've ever seen that he's done really is Alien 3. I think he did that one. That was a terrible movie. But David Fincher's atmosphere in Seven was perfectly translated into Gotham, and Matt Reeves really made it his own. So I think it was cool that he really took aspects from that, built it into his own movie and the atmosphere of this Batman film. And I think it really worked out, and it made the city and the atmosphere and all the characters in it, like, how disgustingly evil would you have to be to rise to the top as one of the leading crime families in Gotham in a city like that? You would have to be diabolical. You would have to be evil. And it really played out well on the screen. I think Matt Reeves took a lot of good creative direction on there and made the film really work. The only thing about Matt Reeves' direction as far as the film, it did feel like The Batman is the second movie in a trilogy. Like, it felt like this was the follow-up to like a year one Batman story rather than the introduction to this version of Batman. Like, the way it played out, he doesn't technically win. He loses in the end, which is a daring decision to take with a superhero like Batman. We never really seen him lose, but he didn't save the day. The city still blew up. All the people that were going to die died. Maybe he saved one or two people from those sniper guys, but the police were going to get them anyway. He didn't save any of those people that he was leading out of the water. You know, they were already alive. The flooding had stopped at that point. So I wonder how he's going to make it all work so that in the future, the Batman doesn't feel a little bit out of place as the opening salvo of a trilogy type film. And we do have a little bit of information regarding Colin Farrell and Penguin, which I find really exciting. Days after the Batman opened, HBO Max committed to a straight to limited series order for the Penguin, with Farrell reprising his role. The spin-off series will be executive produced by Matt Reeves. I think this is great news because, as I mentioned earlier, this is a fantastic version of the Penguin. Colin Farrell was really stealing scenes from everybody. Like, it was hard not to notice him and really keep your eye on him. He really drew you in as this crazy Oswald Cobblepot, crime boss who's kind of ascending as the Maroni family and Falcone family are having problems along the way. And I'm very interested and bought in to see how this kind of all plays out. Obviously, we saw something similar when we had the Suicide Squad movie, which certainly wasn't the box office success that the Batman was, but it was a different time. That was one of the first movies really to come out during COVID. It also came out on HBO Max as a premiere at the same time. That certainly hurt the box office. But we did get the Peacemaker miniseries starring John Cena from James Gunn, which I personally like. I know a lot of people say it's a bad interpretation of Peacemaker, but I thought it was really funny. It was certainly irreverent, and if you're an enormous Peacemaker fan, maybe you don't like it so much. I thought it was a good follow-up to the movie. If you like that movie, it really worked for you. I know a lot of people didn't like the movie, but I thought the show was fun, and I'm really looking forward to this, probably even more than the Batman sequel, which we'll get in 3 or 4 years. I think this show will be awesome. I'm really interested in this. We do know, I believe, that there's going to be a Gotham City PD type show starring Gordon, which I think will be interesting as well. Imagine that'll be on HBO Max. There's going to be a lot of DC Comics kind of fare on HBO Max moving forward. But I do think David Zaslav, the new CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, and his entire team made the right decision here. This was a no-brainer. The Batman made a shitload of money. It's still going to make more money. Hell, it might even hit that $1 billion mark. So it's more than earned the sequel treatment with Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson, Colin Farrell, Zoe Kravitz, and all those people. I think it was a good choice. Obviously, we did see the Joker in the Batman movie, just a little bitty cameo, and I imagine we'll be seeing more Joker in the future. We did review the Batman here on the channel, but at the time I hadn't seen the film. I was really only asking the questions to Joe Corallo, who's a friend of mine. Definitely check this out if you haven't seen the film yourself, or if you're interested in the movie and you want to see what comic books would be a good follow-on to it. Joe has some really good recommendations. If you like the movie, you'll like these comic books. Definitely check this out.